Hey everyone, my name is Jake and today we are going to be looking at some malicious compliance stories, so sit back, relax and enjoy. Entitled Boss and Bully, Trucking Story. This all started with my dad being offered a job, and a condition being that the boss sets me up with one as well. I was fresh out of school and was looking around for jobs, when my dad calls me and asks me to come for an interview for a delivery job. I quickly scatter off to the shower and make it there within 30 minutes. The boss, John, seemed to be nice and was supportive of me going to take a month of leave to study full-time for my truck license, YKB in Sweden or Europe. After the interview and signing the contract, I went to the restroom and overheard John chewing out a colleague of mine for something that was not his fault. I was hoping it was just a stressful day, but boy was I wrong. I come back the next day to work. I meet up with my colleague who is temporarily driving the route I was going to have. He was here to train me and give me instructions, etc. He tells me about the workplace and tells me that everyone hates John. Still, I wanted to make up my own mind on the matter and decided to mostly ignore the small talk. In all of the trucks, there are supposed to be papers showing all the stops and rules for deliveries. There was none in this particular vehicle. We ask John if we could have one, and he begins screaming at my coworker about how he's responsible for it, even though he had only had this route for a week temporarily. After this, I promptly tell my boss the exact date of the course I told him about, seeing as I only told him November through December the first time. He tells me, "That's a long time, but you can always postpone it, so it's fine." He knew the length of the course before getting my contract, and the course cost $3,600 and not refundable. I tell him this and he explodes. I decide to waddle out of there, but now he has this massive grudge against me. My father gets a new contract with his current company with a much bigger payout and decides to stick with it. This makes my boss even angrier at me. My boss then tries to mess with my hours and pay, holding back several $100s, which I got after talking to the economy department. After this, I realize I don't want to work here. He tells me he can offer a truck job after I get my license, and I answer that, yeah, that's good. Day after day, he chews me out for things not in my control, and begins to do everything legally in his power to make stuff worse for me. So, I do the same toward him. As a delivery driver, I have to be nice to customers, etc, etc. One of the big things I did for the customers is holding out on my break to get there in time. I had to deliver everything by 7 AM, and I start my shift at 1 AM. Legally, I have to take a 30-minute break after 6 hours of work. The route was terribly planned. I'd have just minutes left, or even worse, I'd be at the last stop by exactly 7. On one particular day, I was late because we had lots of goods to deliver. I had 3 stops when the clock strikes 7, so I take my break. Customers start calling, but I don't pick up, because I don't have to do so on my break. My boss calls me by the end of my break and complains about my deliveries not being in time. I explain that I was on break, and he tells me I can always postpone it. I tell him, no, I cannot do that because the law requires me to take a break at 7 AM, and he gets furious. The next day, a system-wide message gets sent saying, "We have to deliver by 7 AM because complaints have been coming in. We are about to lose a massive customer." This customer, which we deliver goods for to their customers, was roughly half of the company income. The following 2 days was the same story. Lots to do and I take my break. My boss leaves 11 voicemails on my break, and I call him back when I'm back on the clock. He begins ranting on and on about how terrible I am and such. He tells me I can leave the keys when I get back, and never come back to the job. After my leave, a few coworkers call me and tell me they resigned. The company now lacks half of the drivers and can't manage the workload by themselves. The company loses their biggest client and promptly fires most staff before selling half of the company to someone else. Last I checked, they're not doing too good, because John is still there and nobody wants to work there. Their reputation has spread. I've heard from everyone partaking in the same course as me that the company is a hellhole and going downhill. I'm pretty sure I remember seeing something about the US system in truck driving. It's like really easy to get the license, but EU seems so much harder and like way more complicated. I don't know, does anyone know anything about that? Can't skip lunch to finish my work anymore? No problem. I work for an aerospace manufacturing company. With some parts, we have a finite amount of time during the day to finish them. If you fail to finish within that window, you basically have to restart. I'm also a student, so staying late to finish a part is rarely possible. I work on very large helicopter parts that very few, or in some case no one else, knows how to do. For a while, I had it worked out with my supervisor that on days I had to get a lot done, I would work through my lunch and leave in time to make it to class. Within the past few months, a new manager started and told me I was no longer allowed to skip lunch. It would be taken out no matter what, and they would no longer adjust my time accordingly. If I wanted to, I could stay late to complete my work. Okay, no problem, but I don't want to stay late. So, for the next few weeks, I clocked out for lunch every single day, and clocked out the minute my shift ended as well. As a result, I started missing the time window to complete certain parts, and would clock out at the end of the day, having not yet completed some work. Being a production company, the managers started to feel the heat from this, especially from some unhappy customers who were no longer receiving their parts as quickly as they had been. Last week, I got called into the office and was told that my manager had been thinking about it. After discussing it with my supervisor, he decided as long as I let my supervisor know ahead of time, I could work through my lunch and clock out early or on time as I previously had been. Okay, sounds like a good idea to me. It doesn't sound like the manager was being too much of a douchebag there. It sounds like he was just trying to follow the law and he was a new manager so he didn't want to break any rules. But then again, if the employee signs it saying, no, I'm happy to not take my lunch and so I can leave early, then you should be allowed to do that. Don't call? Okay. So this happened to my brother a while back when he was still in college in the early 2000s. He was talking to this girl who lived a few states away, and they had been at it for a few months. He enjoyed talking to her, and she seemed like a really cool person. Then, she asked him if he wanted to be girlfriend and boyfriend. He said sure, but in his mind, he didn't think it would really change anything. After all, it wasn't like they could go on dates or do anything together, though he had considered going to visit her during the break. Anyway, a few weeks go by, and one day, he tells her that he's going to a party with his friends. She pauses and then asks him if there will be any girls there. He says probably because it's a college party. She then immediately tells him that he can't go if that's the case. Confused, he asks why, and she just says that he can't go to parties where there are girls. Not one to take others' BS, he just said that he's going to the party whether she likes it or not. Then she responds by yelling that if he's gonna go, then he shouldn't call her later. He responds with an enthusiastic, okay, and hangs up on her. He had actually been worried about not being able to call her later due to getting too drunk, so this was actually one less thing for him to worry about. The next morning, she calls him and asks him why he didn't call her, and he just reiterates what she said to him. "You said to not call you." They went back to just being friends after. Yeah, I think he dodged a big bullet right there. Don't damage my book. Several years ago, I went to return a library book to discover that a drink had spilled on it in my bag. The librarian handling returns sighed and said I'd have to take it to have the damage assessed. Of course, the result was I had to pay for the book. After an eternity of checking, queuing, and searching the system for a price, I paid £13.50, despite the RRP printed on the back being £8.99. She takes the book and is about to drop it in the returns bin with all the other normal returns when I say, "Hang on, I paid for it. That's my book now, right?" She shrugs and says sure, but then she starts to remove the property of library sticker, and as she pulls at it, the page starts to tear. "Whoa, don't damage my book now," I quip. She glared at me as if I was really pushing it and continued to pull. In probably the only moment of my life my brain worked fast enough, I came out with, "If you damage my book in any way, I'll have to charge you for that." She let out a squealing noise and stormed off into the back staff-only area, then returned with her boss, who thrusts the book in my hand and says, "Just take it and leave." Malicious compliance, I annoyed the librarian by following her rules. To be fair, if she did rip the page, you could probably just say, "Oh, I want the money back now because you ripped my property," but I guess annoying her is good as well. Do the dishes. At 1:30 AM, my dad decided to change his mind about me doing my dishes in the morning. He even stayed up so he could tell me to go back downstairs and do them once I got into my bed. He's kind of a douche like that. Fair enough, Mum is sleeping and I would be ticked if she gets woken up. So just now, I made sure to make the most amount of noise possible. Every single fork I managed to drop on the plates. Every pot and pan might have just hit the edge of the sink a few too many times. I wasn't careful putting the pots in the lower cabinet, so I may have accidentally spilled them back on the floor. But the dishes were done, right when my dad wanted them, but probably not the same for my mum. He's gonna have a great day with her tomorrow when they start their road trip 6 hours away. Edit, Mum chewed him out over being such a douche last night. Not because he was being a douche, but because it woke her up. He apologized to her and made a pretty bad apology to me. Hey, I mean, his mum probably wasn't too happy with him, but if it gets back at his dad, then you gotta make some sacrifices. Don't help me then. Before uni, I worked as a temp. One of the jobs I had was in a plastic recycling center. I was hired to fill plastic bags with plastic, so it could be processed at a later date. But the plastic with which to fill the plastic bags with was a few weeks late, so as there were very little, well, literally no work for me to do, I was given various silly tasks, such as sweeping the entire empty warehouse, which was completely pointless considering it doesn't get dirty overnight, plus other completely pointless stuff just to waste time. Add into this, I had one coworker who hated me from the second I got there, and a miserable douche of a boss, and it wasn't an enjoyable job. After about a week, we had a load of plastic tarpauling mixed in with other stuff, and I was tasked with crushing it with one of these. It was a huge machine and took around a day of solid work to fill completely, considering you had to sort all the plastic out. And once it's filled, you have to unload the machine by pulling the roundabout 300 kilogram bale out. As it's a fairly dangerous machine, it's not as simple as just opening the door to unload the bale. So the miserable douche of a boss comes over, opens the machine and starts trying to pull the bale out. I walk off to get my gloves so I don't rip my hands open helping get the bale out, and he says, "Oh, never mind, don't bother helping." So I said, "Okay," and went on my break and watched him struggle with it for the next 10 minutes, before he used a forklift truck to pull it out. When he came back over, I don't think I've seen an angrier man. He tried to give me a telling off, but I said I was following instruction and ignored everything he said. So he left me alone for the next couple of weeks I was there. Once the plastic arrived for me to fill, I decided to quit that day, 'cause screw it, they wasted my time so I wasted theirs. That was probably a bit petty at the end, but OP knows the story more than me, and if they were wasting his time then sure. Hey everyone, I hope you're all having a really good day and that you enjoyed that video. If you want to see more videos like it, then click on screen right now. And if you never want to miss out on a video, then hit subscribe, but I will see you all very soon.